I hear the voice of one cry.
You see, we don't like to talk about death. That's something that we spend much of our lives trying to shut out. Death is something that we don't like to think about. But you see, the truth and reality of death is that it brings us face to face with future reality. We don't like to contemplate the fact that one day we're all going to die. But the Bible says this, that it's a time where we can consider our eternal state is at a funeral. It's a time when death knocks on our front door that we can consider our eternal state before a holy, righteous, and just God. Do we think about our sin? The Bible says this, we've all fallen short of God's glory. And today I ask you, do you really think about that? Do we really consider our state before God? Our lying? Our stealing? Our taking the Lord's name in vain? Or how about even our wicked thoughts? Our hatreds to our fellow brothers? Do we actually take the time to think about that? The Bible states that the wages of sin is death. There's no escaping it. And the writer in Ecclesiastes, he says, it is better to go into the house of mourning than to go into the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it on his heart. It's at such times like this that one may ask, where am I going when I die? It's a question that's very real and very worth considering. The writer of Hebrews says it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the judgment. And today I ask, what sentence will be passed upon you on Judgment Day? You see, there's two kinds of people in this room. There's the saved and there's the unsaved. There's two kinds of people in this world. There's the saved and the unsaved. Now there's black people, and there's white people, and there's Asian people, and the tall, fat, and skinny. And that's how we look at it. But in God's economy, there's only two types of people in this world. And I ask you, will the blood of Christ redeem you on that dreadful day? Or will your sin condemn your soul for all eternity? Do you consider these things? Have you ever considered these things? You see, it's only when someone passes away, a friend or a loved one, do our minds begin to turn to this. And that is why the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. That is why it's better to go into the house of mourning than to go into the house of feasting. Are you laying these things to your heart? The Bible says that death is the end of all men. And when we, the living, go into the house of mourning, we lay it to our hearts. The Bible says that God, He's angry with the wicked every day. The Bible says that God hates all workers of iniquity. But you see, Jim Jones, he believed in a whole Bible and not a Bible full of holes. He took the good with the bad, and he laid it at the foot of the cross. And a lot of you might be thinking today, how arrogant is it for him to stand up and say this at this time? But I'd like to just take a moment by way of illustration to explain what I'm truly talking about. You see, there was this man, and he's riding down the road, and as he's coming down this road, he sees this decrepit, matted, wounded, filthy, stinking dog. And he takes this dog, and he picks it up, and he puts it in his car, wraps it in his suit coat, and drives home. And he takes this dog, and he brings this dog around his family. He bandages this dog, he nurtures this dog, and his family begin to love this dog. They name this dog, they feed it, they pet it, they care for it, and the dog slowly begins to regain its strength. And as the dog begins to regain its strength, the man decides, you know what, I'll take the bandages off of the dog. I'll go ahead and I'll begin to take the bandages off the dog. And as he's taking the bandages off the dog shakes loose and it runs out the front door. And all you can see down the road is a cloud of dust. And this man says, what a wretched dog. I brought this dog around my family. I fed this dog. I nurtured this dog. And this is the things I get. Well, about 4 days later, there's a scratch at the door. And when he opens up the door, he sees that same wounded dog with another wounded dog. And I'm here to tell you today that like Jim Jones, I'm just one wounded dog trying to show other wounded dogs where they can find healing. Okay, and that healing, the Bible says that Christ died for sinners. That's what the Bible testifies. It says that the just died for the unjust, that the righteous died for the unrighteous. It says that the godly died for the ungodly. And the Bible says that at times like this, at times when we come to mourn, the living will lay it to their hearts. You see, Christ was bruised for our iniquities, and it pleased God to crush him on our behalf. But do we really think about that? Do we really take the time to think about what Christ has done in our lives? I'm talking to Christians and I'm talking to ones that aren't Christians. Do we take the time to think of what Christ did as he stretched out his arms and hung, bled, and died on the cross for sinners? As God poured his wrath out on Jesus Christ and bruised him for our transgressions. Do we take the time to really think about that? You see, I know no one likes to hear that they're flawed. I know that no one likes to hear that they're misguided, that they're sinful. But I know this one thing. I know that Jim's prayer would be that wicked sinners like us would know where we can find healing. I know that about Jim Jones. I know that his prayer for any of us that are under the sound of my voice would be that you put down your weapons of warfare, that you would look to Christ and be saved. You see, our dear brother Jim, he has finished the race. Oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, grave, where is thy victory? You see, Jim Jones, he lived a purpose-driven life. You see, Jim Jones, he lived God's wonderful plan. And you see, Jim Jones, he's living his best life now. And I ask you, do you really believe that today? You see, many events influence our lives. And it's my prayer that the death of Jim Jones will influence you to consider the state of your soul before holy, righteous, and just God. May God bless the reading, hearing, and doing of his word. I thank you guys all for the opportunity to share as I mourn today for my lost friend Jim. I thank you for that opportunity, and folks, if Jim had anything to say in this room today, it would be look to Christ and live. It would be look to Christ and live. Thank you very much.
I hear the voice of one cry. I hear the voice of one cry. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. I hear the voice